very happy to have Kelly Springer with us today. So, Kelly, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
Although we're not sitting together, we are a few thousand miles away from each other. You are in upstate New York.
I am. I'm right outside of Syracuse, New York. So right in the center of New York State.
So, can you, for the ignorant listeners out there who maybe have only known New York from the movies, what does upstate New York look like? Because again, I've traveled, and it's nothing like what people associate with New York.
I'm really glad you brought that up. So where I live, the county right next to me where I grew up, we have more cows than we have people. Lots of farmland. We live in the Finger Lakes, so that's where the glaciers came down and carved out these beautiful fresh lakes. So we have amazing water around us, lots of trees, lots of farms. So it's a really beautiful place to live.
Are you from around there?
Yes, I'm from here.
So, born and raised in Syracuse, you said, right?
Born and raised, yeah. So I grew up in a little city called Auburn, and now I live in a teeny village called Skinny Atlas. So if you can say that 10 times fast. But this is where the Native Americans are from. And so Skinny Atlas means long lake. So we have a 19-mile long lake right in our town, and it's beautiful crystal spring-fed water. You can still drink out of the lake. It's absolutely beautiful.
Wow, that's awesome. And okay, so now you gave us a bridge into nutrition. So yeah, is it healthy to drink from that water?
Yes, and that's the thing where we live in this area because we live in a walkable village. So being able to walk down to the bank, get your hair done, go to the grocery store, it's amazing to be in a walkable space so that you can get that, 10-minute exercise, see that lake, see that for mental health purposes. So it really does tie into nutrition.
But you said about drinking the water specifically. Can you like drinking it is healthy? You can drink it without any concerns. I remember when I was very young, we did a trip to Vermont, and they told us wherever we were that we can eat the snow.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, there is, a lot of times we purify it. We have, purification coming in. But really and truly, as long as they're not like an algae bloom or something like that, the water is pretty safe
Pretty cool.
because it's spring fed. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. I have to ask you a question, and again, excuse my ignorance. Is there a difference, and what is the difference between a nutritionist and or a dietitian?
It's a big question. I'm glad that you asked it. So there is a difference there. So when you are a dietitian, it means that you have to complete, it's called a DPD program, which means that you have to have all the different sciences, nutrition classes, labs. There's a whole criteria to that. Once you graduate with your BS, your Bachelor's of Science in Nutrition, you then go on to do 2 years of master's and an internship. That internship is basically, if you want to think about it like residency for a doctor, we have to do clinical, long-term care facilities, food service, outpatient. And so you have an entire 9 months of an internship. Then you sit for the National Registered Dietitian test, and that's when you become a registered dietitian. After that, we are mandated to have 75 continuing ed credits every 5 years to make sure that we're up to date on that credentialing and getting the newest information. A nutritionist could be anybody. It could be someone that has a 2-year degree. It could be someone that took a course online. It really doesn't have a criteria to it. So that's where you want to make sure you're looking for registered dietitians if you're looking into the nutrition space.
And did you always know that you wanted to kind of enter this realm of food health?
Yes, which is I feel extremely lucky. So when I was a teenager, my aunt, one of 12, my dad's youngest sister,
Well,
she was a dietitian and still is today. Yeah, one of 12. Let's just go back to that, right? So I have 200 immediate family members. but I was her babysitter nanny for her three boys. And I loved that she could use her degree with her family. And also, she was always this innovative person. She was working in retail for grocery stores or working for colleges as a professor. She's now working for a large pharmaceutical company called Novo Nordisk as the dietitian educator. So I love that you could always kind of change and do different things. And so I started working in the nutrition space when I was a teenager and got right into school for nutrition. And I felt extremely lucky that I knew what I wanted to do from a young age. I know a lot of people struggle with that. And still to this day, I am 100% in the right profession. I love what I do. I love the people I get to work with. And every day I get to see that light bulb turn on in that person's brain saying, like, I never knew that, or this was so helpful. So I really feel like every day I get to make a difference.
And it's ever evolving, right? It's always so dynamic, and we're always
It
discovering
is.
new things. Is that a challenge to some degree for like being a dietitian?
Well, I think it's a challenge because people are confused because new research, because nutrition and dietitians, we're based on research. So I can only state what I know at that time. So unless there is a true research that has been done on digestive health or on proteins or on carbohydrate intake, I am not able to talk about that, whatever diet might be. And that's confusing to people because, if you know about the incredible edible egg, right? The egg has been demonized and now it's the best thing in the world. Well, it just took more research because when they first started, they're like, we know there's some correlation between saturated fat and heart disease, but they didn't really understand that when you eat an egg, your liver will actually make less cholesterol. They didn't know that yet. So that's what we're always trying to explain to people, that nutrition is based in research. So we have to go with what we know at that time. So it may change as we evolve more and have more research and understand anatomy and physiology more. But it's getting close to really understanding the body and how these different macro and micronutrients work in the body.
What is and what would be classified as like true research? Like who's that regulated by? Is it whether it's peer reviewed? Is it whether it's published in a respected
Yeah.
journal?
We're really lucky as part of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics that we have peer-reviewed articles, and there's actually a rating of how legitimate that research is. So it has to have a certain amount of people. There's a whole bunch of criteria. So on our Academy site, we can see research depending on that legitimacy of like where it falls on that scale, so that you can really see, because that's what happens, and that's not a good thing, is that they do a research pilot with 5 people and then say that eating bacon every day is a healthy thing. So like you know what I mean, I'm just making that up, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it just, you have to make sure that you're getting what you need to be getting out of that research, and it's our job to kind of take that research, look through that research, and then we can justify it to be like, okay, this is real.
Because that is somewhat of a problem, especially nowadays when literally anyone, like we're doing right now, we could film ourselves saying anything, right?
Hmm.
We can film
Hmm.
ourselves with a green screen of some research paper that we know nothing about, and trying to promote or
Hmm.
push a certain ideology, idea, diet, eggs, food, whatever it is. And it's a problem because
Hmm.
anyone can do that. So how do you recommend that people filter through that? Because it's so difficult when again you're on social media. Maybe like me, I think I must follow at least, again, I won't call them dietitians because I don't know what their level of education is, but I follow, dozens of people who are promoting certain ideas around nutrition and food. So what is the best way to kind of to try and filter through all that information? And because it's not just the words they're spitting out, it's also they try and at least back it up with different references, that anecdotes that they see, that they bring to the table from different online sources or different really anywhere.
Well, I think looking at the degrees, looking at, if they have a website, who are they and what are they trying to push? and why are they trying to push it? So I own Kelly's Choice. We are a collective of dietitians. We do not sell anything but education. So we may recommend products and support products and help that product get their word out. But still to this day, 10 years later of owning this company, I really feel it's important to understand that I feel like it's up to the consumer to educate them on why they should be doing something versus selling packets of whatever it might be.
So I guess, yes, that's always a red flag, right? When at the end of a video, they're trying to force something upon you or get you to buy something. But there are people who don't do that, who are, at least to me, like very compelling, whether it's pushing an all meat diet or a vegan diet or, different personal different personal anecdotes, where I'm thinking to myself, like, this is so interesting, but how relevant is it to me as a person versus to that individual who clearly, again, has positive results, at least from what we can see superficially.
Yes. So that's where any time that you're hearing someone speak about an all or nothing situation, all meat, all veggie, all this, all that, then you're getting into where we can fall into deficiencies. And so because I brought up that term micro and macronutrients. So just to break this down for people. So there's 3 macronutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. In any way that we are limiting those 3 categories, you're going to end up with nutrition deficiencies in some manner, okay? We need those. They work in our bodies to support cell growth, for every living muscle, body, cell. And then we have our micronutrients, which goes into vitamins and minerals. And so if we're not getting all of that, and we're listening to someone who's cutting out these types of foods or saying these are bad, that's where you should have a red flag. Those should all trigger a red flag. Because nutrition isn't just one thing. It's not just one thing that's causing chronic disease. It's a host of things that's causing chronic disease or causing inflammation or causing whatever. It's not just one thing.
My younger brother read a book, I forget the name of the book, but it's all about the gluten-free diet. And that book is known in my family, my immediate family at least, as a, in quotes, the Bible. Because if we just listen to this book, if we just follow the general rules of gluten-free, odds are that we'll be okay. What is your reaction to when you hear the gluten-free? Because that's a bit different than only eat meat, because it is very inclusive to many things, but not to others. But it's still including those 3 major groups of foods that you mentioned, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. So going back to gluten, let's just tell the viewers what this actually is. So gluten is a protein. So it's a protein. It is not the end all be all. And so just to explain what it is. So it is a protein that is found in wheat, rye, and barley. Okay. So this protein would come into our bodies when we eat rye, wheat, or barley, and it would come in, and in your stomach, you would break down gluten, and basically your body can handle it. It goes on to the small intestine and everything's fine. In America, the problem is we're adding more gluten to products because gluten helps with keeping that food really soft, and it's that mouthfeel. So in America, we're adding more gluten to the food that already has gluten naturally, and the stomach can't break it all down. So what happens is it then goes into the small intestine, causing that inflammation. It could trigger some autoimmunes. And this is the problem with adding in more, because our bodies can't handle it. It's not in the right portion size. So we'll always hear people from America that go over to countries like Italy and say, I could eat pasta. I didn't have any issues. I didn't have any bloating. I didn't have any inflammation. That's because they're not adding it to the food. It's in its regular portion size. It's in its regular state. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's a
So
bit
this
yeah,
is
but it
where,
makes me
right.
want to ask you why.
Well, it became, I don't know why the American diet is the way it is. Just so you know, the standard American diet, the acronym is SAD, and it is really a sad state. And I'm trying, and dietitians across the US are trying to change so many different things in the way that it is. But that shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't have that added. Because we don't want to trigger autoimmunes. We don't want to cause more inflammation. But the problem is when people go on a gluten-free diet, a lot of times the gluten-free foods may not contain the right amount of fiber. So if you're moving into like a rice or a corn, and that was the majority of the gluten-free foods, that fiber source is really what feeds our gut bacteria, helps with our serotonin levels, our metabolism. I mean, the host goes on and on. So if you're cutting out something, if you're cutting out gluten, again, you need to work with a registered dietitian. Where are you going to get your fiber from? How are you getting fiber in the diet? So if you're cutting something out, you need to add something back in. Where are you getting that from? So getting the education on different types of grains like teff and sorghum and quinoa and millet and buckwheat. These are gluten-free grains that you can still get the fiber from. Okay, so that's where it really takes working with a registered dietitian versus just saying, I'm not going to eat gluten, because you may be missing something from the diet if you're doing that.
But it's like so many Americans could just inadvertently be over consuming gluten, just without them knowing.
Right. And so that's where it's really important. So when we take on a client, we give them access to this app called Healthy. It's really fantastic. And they can take pictures of their food, pictures of labels, and it goes right to our registered dietitian. So we can really be, right there in real time, looking with them to say, hey, that's probably not a product we want to go with. Let's go over to this. Or we're seeing how much they're eating, because if they're eating huge portions of gluten foods, that might cause it too. So we should have that balance. Remember back to what I was saying, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. We need to have a balance in the diet. So it's not just this huge plate of pasta without anything else. That might be too much. So that's where being able to see it, see that picture, and have real-time feedback has been really, really effective.
What, based on the working with individuals in your career, what do you think is the biggest problem in the US? Is it education around nutrients, around food,
It
around
is.
nutrition?
It is.
So just
So I
awareness?
give this example because I think, yes, because, okay, so I tell people, listen, I drive a car almost every day, right? I drive a car. I'm a proficient driver. I drive every day. I never had the education on how to change a tire, how to change my oil, what fluids work what. I don't know how to do that. So I take my car to a mechanic to have that
Me
done.
too, by the way.
The same thing with eating. Yeah, I never learned. But the same thing with nutrition. So we eat every day, we're proficient eaters, but we never had the education on how to put it together. So this is where working with a registered dietitian, understanding the education behind it, we can put these foods together, and it's not difficult. It's just that we never had the education.
Now, education, because not only that we didn't have the education, but I feel like, at least looking at a generation maybe older than me, like my parents, it almost seems like there was education or information thrown at the population that stuck very hard, and it's very difficult for that generation, one age group above me, to really snap out of. For example, like the eggs, like avocados, like, I don't know, certain foods that were big no-nos, or foods that you really had to limit yourselves, or even consuming a lot of certain things that are maybe low on sugar and things like that, or low on fat, that people believe that you can just eat as much of as possible. So do you see that as well, like just lingering effects of previous education as well as lack of education?
Absolutely. I mean, we went through the entire 90s of a fat-free movement, the whole decade. I mean, I remember in my refrigerator as a teenager, I would open and every single label in my refrigerator would say fat-free, fat-free, fat-free. And so we were taught that fat was bad. I mean, Oprah brought this entire wheelbarrow of fat saying fat is bad. And Weight Watchers went on to have that same message, and Jenny Craig and everything else. So it really does take the education of understanding, okay, why did the fat movement happen? So if you actually look at the history of it, it was because there was a cardiologist who made that correlation between fat and heart disease. He didn't have all the data, so he put it out too quickly, just like we were talking about with research. He put that message out into the world too fast before he really knew everything about it. And so that's what came out of it, was this fear of fat. And now we're in this fear of carbohydrates. We're in this weird fear zone. So this is where we need the education of the different types of fats, the different types of carbohydrates, the different types of proteins. So this is where it really is an education lack of understanding where this all came from. And, you know, the guy was trying to help way back in the day. I don't think he did it in a bad way. He was trying to figure out what was the correlation. But now we don't have enough education out there, and it's sad because I'm on the American Heart Association board. I'm trying to even change things. So at the last meeting I was just at, I was talking to the district manager, and I said, can we stop talking about salt? Like, that's not the only thing causing heart disease. And when we're in 2023, there's so many other things that we should be discussing. And she's like, well, we're a research-based organization. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but that research is from 1996. Like, we need to come up to speed on where we are and changing over this information. So we even have these large organizations like the American Heart Association giving out old messaging. So this is where it's hard. We, as dietitians, we have to kind of fight against that.
Yeah, and these big associations, and I guess also many corporations out there are, again, not helping get past that lingering effect of previous education. Because even again,
Correct.
you mentioned salt on my family's dinner table. A big no-no if you're like adding salt to the food. And it's almost things like that are almost funny to think about, because again, just from personal experience, personal anecdotes, bit of playing and toying around with different foods and different styles of eating and different hours of the day, and listening to all these like different Instagram messages that I see and follow. It does seem to me that I generally feel good, fit, healthy, happy, if I just avoid the big no-no, I think, based on my feeling, which is sugar. So do we have still an irrational fear of sugar? Or should that, and again, I say irrational,
Okay,
I say
so
irrational fear, but when I look around me, it seems like no one is even scared of it.
Okay, so let's dive into this, and I'm going to give you a really great analogy which will break this down so you understand. So carbohydrates are like a giant rainbow of foods, all right? So this whole carb zone, and there's all different foods that fall into carbohydrates, from your sugary beverages to fruits to some carbohydrates like vegetables, pastas, grains, rice, breads. There's a huge variety of foods, even dairy products that have lactose. Okay, so this giant rainbow of carbohydrates. Now, one side of that rainbow is pot of gold, and one side is angry leprechaun. The difference between the carbohydrates is one has fiber and one does not. So when we say the word simple carbohydrates, that is that simple sugar, and that's angry leprechaun. When the food has fiber as a carbohydrate, that's pot of gold. So what's the difference? So this is where the education again comes in. So
Are those terms that you use, by the way?
What?
The angry leprechaun and the pot of gold.
These two, yes, I made this all up, but this visual really helps people to understand. So when you're looking at a food label and you see that it has carbohydrates, but it doesn't have fiber, you're on angry leprechaun side. When it has carbohydrates and has fiber, you're on pot of gold side. So what's the difference? Okay, here it is. The angry leprechaun is this angry, angry man, and he's got little knives in his hands, okay? So he goes into the body and he's causing havoc. He's causing higher insulin levels. He's causing inflammation. He's causing nicks and cuts through where we go. He's causing higher cholesterol levels, which leads to blood pressure. He's causing massive, massive havoc, okay? Versus pot of gold side, that fiber helps to decrease inflammation, decrease that bad cholesterol, and helps to recycle that cholesterol into the liver. So this is where you have the same heading, carbohydrate, but you have two completely different things.
And on the food
So
labels,
yes,
is it?
sugar is,
No, I was going to say on the food labels. So is it vague on purpose?
well, I think the education wasn't there. So when even 10 years ago, let's say, the nutrition academy that we go to, our handouts for diabetes were based on carbohydrates. There, honestly, if you go back to the education that we were giving out, there was no talk about fiber 10 years ago, 20 years ago. No talk about fiber. It wasn't until recently that we learned about this synergistic effect between fiber, the gut, the brain, the body, metabolism, and how fiber is the only food for our gut bacteria and how it really truly affects everything in your body. So when back in the day, when we used to pitch like whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, we never made the correlation to the American public or to anyone that the reason why we were saying it was because of that fiber source. That's why we wanted to have more of those. But until you understand the difference between angry leprechaun and pot of gold, you're not likely to make those changes.
So what are you seeing when you speak to people, work with people? What is their biggest challenge? Because they can sit with you, they can get the information, however long that takes, or if it doesn't have to be you obviously, but anyone they work with, meet with, who's a registered dietitian, they can get the information. But what is that? What is the biggest challenge after that?
So, what I used to do when I first started private practice, I would do this nutrition dump and I would give all the information because I wasn't a business person. I felt bad. They were paying for the service and whatever, right? So, I would try to just give them all the information. Well, I found out that that was probably the worst thing I could have ever done because it was overwhelming. There was too much there. And so I've changed my ways. I had this amazing mentor. Her name was Cindy DeBold. And she said, Kelly, you always talk about the different pieces of nutrition. Why don't we set up an entire kind of series? So what's happening now is that we actually take people through, it's called a transformation program. And we walk through carbohydrates, proteins, fats. We go through sleep, hydration, snacking, breakfast. And so every single week, there's goal setting for nutrition, hydration, and exercise. And the reason why it's so successful is because we're focusing on just that one thing. But when they come back to us the week after, they're able to say, this was hard for me. This was easy. I have a question about this. So having that interaction and seeing them over a 6 to 12 week period really truly makes it so they understand the information. They're able to put it into practice. They have support through the Healthy app in between their visits. And we're seeing long-term success and reversal of chronic disease because we're sticking with them. It's not a one and done. It's not, here's your handout, good luck to you, here's your meal plan. That does not work. I have to tell you, it does not work. So it really truly, that education it needs to come in a course.
So let's say you drip information at me for an extended period of about 12 weeks, slowly working with me. And again, but after that, so you said you see obviously very nice results after that extended period results. But then
Yes.
do it because because it's something I struggle with myself. Again, not in a in a horrendous way, obviously, because a lot of people do. But having the education is one thing, but then having the discipline to stick to the education, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you go to the grocery store, when you see stacked shelves of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. It's very tempting, and when you bring that Ben and Jerry's ice cream home, it's very tempting to finish it. So again, I when I buy Ben and Jerry's, or if I get a pizza, or if I do all these things that I know I shouldn't be doing, it's not an education thing whatsoever.
Okay, two things there. Number one, we never kick people off the app. So even if they've done their whole
Mm.
thing, they're always on so they can always keep track. They can always jump back on. They can always schedule another dietitian visit. So that's a huge thing for me is that we never kick them off and we don't charge them to be on the app. So that's first thing. Second thing, if anyone from Instacart is listening, I would love to be the spokesperson because when you shop on like an app like that, like on Instacart, you are less likely to pick up the Ben and Jerry's. You are less likely to pick up the pizza. You stick to that grocery list. I just did it this morning for our list. And so I'm not buying those extra things. It's saving me tons of money. And so I think by not going in that store, being tempted by those foods, it is so much easier to stay on track.
Absolutely, and I think I almost 100% agree with you. And I've been in your shoes too, because I've also used Instacart when I was living in the US. And it's funny because sometimes people get annoyed that you have to pay a bit extra for the delivery, but in fact, you do buy way less, which is very interesting.
Way
But
less.
but it's again, and I agree. So it's a short-term solution for that day, or maybe for a couple of days, or maybe even for a few hours. But everyone's still, it's so easy now. In 12 minutes, I could have a delivery here of whatever I wanted, literally whatever I wanted for a pretty cheap price. So I really, again, and it's just something I toy with and try and explore is, does it come down to, again, just a certain element of discipline or discipline refinement to stick to what we know? Because again, even if we look at vices, if we look at smoking cigarettes, we know that it's bad for us, right? We know, and again, I know people that know that it's bad for them and will say that it's bad for them and acknowledge that it's bad for them, but they'll smoke a pack of cigarettes every day.
There's always going to be vices. There's always going to be vices. We are human beings. We all have our things, right? So this is where understanding that there's always going to be the person that's going to have a hard time or struggle. But with the help of nutrition, the help of the education, we at least can get them to think about the foods differently. So I went out to eat last night and we still, had a glass of wine, had whatever, but I'm always thinking, even myself, of what I just told my patient. Vegetables, protein, vegetables, protein. So I had a Caesar salad with salmon. Is it the best dressing in the world? No, but this is where I had an enjoyable dinner. It was absolutely delicious. I had my protein, got my omega-3s, got that protein source, got my vegetables, and I had a wonderful time. So this is where that's going to stick in the back of their brain. They're going to remember my face. They're going to remember those conversations. And is it always going to be perfect? I know, but seriously, they do. Because people come back to me, they're like, I literally heard your voice in my head. Or I saw your face as I was in the grocery store. So it is interesting of being with them for so long, having that connection, and reaching them where they are, right? Reaching them. And those weeks that they come back, they're like, this was hard. I had my grandson's birthday party and all there was pizza and cake. What do I do? And so having those conversations and saying, enjoy it. Enjoy it. But like tomorrow, let's get back to that protein and vegetables. Like you're not a bad person for having the pizza and cake, but like tomorrow, let's get back, or the next meal, let's get back. And I think that once we reach people where they are and we really truly don't demonize food anymore, that's going to happen. That's life, and enjoy that moment. I think that's the
Have
difference too. It can't be an all or nothing situation.
have you struggled with food, with keeping it balanced for extended periods of time?
I really feel in my 20s, I was completely out of balance. I was a broke college kid. When I say broke, I mean broke. I put myself through school. And I really don't like cooking. It's not my favorite thing in the world. People are always surprised at that.
I know,
And so I
actually, I
think in my
heard you
20s,
say that
I,
on I think it was one of the TV shows, Good Morning, one of the morning shows that you were on, that you said you're definitely not a cook.
oh, right. No, I don't enjoy it. It's not my thing. I'd much rather plant peonies, as you see behind me, or clean or do laundry. Like I love house stuff, but cooking is not my thing. And so I think in my 20s, I really was doing exactly what I'm telling you. Is like I just was getting like carbohydrates or just getting protein, and I didn't have a balanced diet, and therefore like I just didn't feel that great, and I was kind of struggling. Like I was never heavy, but I was always struggling with weight of like, what should I eat or what shouldn't I eat? Or I'm going on this girl trip. Should I not? Should I go a week of starving myself? Or so I definitely went through those struggles of putting it together. And I have to say, once I started listening to the lessons I was teaching people and actually putting that forth in my life, not to be gross, but like I'm going to the bathroom every morning. I'm sleeping well. My weight has been stable for 15 years. Like I have energy. My skin is great. And so it's like, wow, what I'm teaching people really works. And so it's just funny of how I got out of that cycle of restriction and that whole girl thing, right? Of like, don't eat this or eat that or whatever it was. And so once I got into breakfast, lunch, dinner, eating exactly what I'm talking about, protein and my vegetables, everything was stable. Mental health was good, food was good, energy's good, and I have two teenage daughters. So I'm also highly aware that what I say and how I act will be followed. So I have to be that role model in this positive food forward way because they're watching. They're watching everything I do.
It really annoys me when someone is on the right track and let's say following your principles and really trying to maybe balance their life out or turn their life around to a positive way in a positive way. But when the association is straight away to weight or body figure, does in your eyes does it have to have that connection, or can we look at nutrition just as nutrition, and then it'll probably by default help our skin, help our shape, help our weight? But because I think a lot of people, again, have the education, so they maybe try certain things and try and be more balanced and follow some principles that you mentioned, but don't see instant results and don't lose the weight as quick as they wanted and give up on these ways because they think it's not helping them, because the only way that they're measuring success is whether they lost the weight or whether they, put on muscle, or if they look better or if their skin looks nicer.
I'm really glad you brought up that point. So I now, as a dietitian, I don't even ask their weight on the first visit. It's not important to me at all because I work with people that are 300 pounds, 200 pounds, and I'm working with a lady who's 83 pounds. The goal is health. And so if we're educating on any one of those gamuts, it's about health. So you could be, and this is where I'm saying reaching people where they are, because the weight, like you said, is naturally going to either come up or come down depending on how they're putting that how they're putting that health together in their life. Like, are they getting the protein? Are they getting the carbohydrates? Are they getting hydration? Are they moving their body? And all those things in combination are going to get them healthier. And that's the point. You could have, I have brothers, one that's 6'5", and this, lacrosse player, he's gonna be at a different weight than the track star. It's not gonna be the same. We have different body types, different bone structure, different, nationalities. And so it's going to be different, but the whole message is health, not weight.
Calories is also, if I'm already on the topic of things that annoy me that people talk about when eating. I'm interested to hear about your opinion, because I just cannot. When I hear people talk about 112, eat 112 calories there, and then combine it with 50 calories and 200 more calories there, all those calculations for me, it does not sit well with me at all, and I hear it way too often.
It is back to a 1990s thing. So it's a points. It's that Weight Watchers mentality where it is the calculation and saving all those points or saving all those calories so you can have the chocolate cake. That is the 1990 mentality. And so it is extremely difficult when I see that 50-year-old woman who is just, that is ingrained in their brain. And I said, I'm not going to talk about calories. We're going to talk about how to put together this plate in portion sizes and how to put this together. So it is an old way of thinking. It is not helping with health. A calorie is a unit of energy, and it should be thought about as a unit of energy. Calorie is not just like, for most people, calorie, gluten, not they're negative words, or fat, negative words. Again, going back to the education. So we need units of energy to move our bodies forward. If we, but it's just truly the education of putting it together. So calories should not be the biggest thing on the label, because that's not equating to nutrition. You could have something that has calories, units of energy, but no micro or macronutrients, basically, right? So this is where, what are you eating? It came up the other day, by the way. It came up about veggie straws, veggie sticks.
Like those are
said,
like the equivalent of chips, but veggies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So she's like, "Are they good?" And I was like, "They have no nutrients." like you're eating angry leprechaun. Like there's no like there's nothing to it. So when you eat something like that, it's calories, it's this thing that's going to spur insulin, it's going to store fat, and you're not going to be satisfied in any way, shape, or form because your body's not satisfied. It's not giving you any nutrients. So that's where the understanding of a calorie doesn't necessarily equal nutrients.
Yeah, and that's an issue, like, because again, people will see the veggie on the veggie sticks packaging and think that there's, good intention, maybe. Let's buy this instead of buying my Doritos.
Right.
And that'll help me long term, and that'll make me more balanced. So what are some things like, there's some confusing stuff, like something again, maybe it's just me being cynical, but the whole organic thing and all that stuff, you see all these things where it seems like sometimes very misleading, or sometimes very difficult to judge whether, even when you have good intentions, is how do you know you're buying something with good quality? And again, I know that's it's a broad field, but if we look at like organic, the term organic, can we trust if something says organic milk or organic cheese or organic vegetables? Can we trust that we're getting good quality food?
Yeah, so it was when I first started private practice, and it was one of the best examples of what you're asking. So this guy comes into me and he goes, "Kelly, I am really, really trying to eat healthier. I am trying everything. And look, I even bought organic Pop-Tarts." And I was like, "Can you bring in that box? I've got to see the box." And so we looked, and this box of organic Pop-Tarts had 7 different forms of angry leprechaun. 7 different forms of simple sugar.
Yeah.
It was organic, but it was truly just angry leprechauns.
So no nutrients, no nutrients, pretty much.
No nutrients. So this is where understanding, what are you eating? What are you getting? Having that gluten-free label or organic label or whatever doesn't mean necessarily that you're getting a product that is actually giving you nutrients. And then in the way of fruits and vegetables, the word organic means that it can't be a genetically modified organism, which is really prominent in the United States. But they haven't equated it to negative nutrients. So I was really lucky to go to the Driscoll Berry farm, and they were explaining the difference between their conventional strawberries versus the organic strawberries. And in California, they have very strong regulations on pesticides and things like that. So they said that you'd have to eat somewhere between 750 to 1,500 strawberries in one sitting to reach a pesticide level that would come out on the toxicity lab. So that's where if you eat 700 to 1,500 strawberries in one sitting, you're going to have other issues versus toxic load. So this is where understanding that eating fruits and vegetables is a good thing. Those are nutrients, those are vitamins. And even if you're buying conventional, they are still good. They are still good.
Okay, because even that's something that, the social media world really scare us about, about the pesticides and about buying all these things from the grocery stores, that you have to soak them in baking soda before you eat them, and you have to take all these measures so that you don't end up, on the toxicity spectrum. Are we over fearful maybe because of these different messages pushed
Yes,
out there?
because we're scaring people. We're scaring them away from fruits and vegetables just to go to veggie sticks. Like this is not the right message.
Yeah. And tell me, what would you, and just from personal, now if I can, use this platform for myself for a second, I stopped eating breakfast about 4 years ago, almost. And I only feel positive effects from it. And this is coming from someone, that I've, for the 95% of my life, I ate just, the generic cereal breakfast, Honey Nut Cheerios, Cocoa Puffs, that type of thing, literally every morning. And I took a kind of a drastic switch away from that. And now I'm in a stage where I don't even have to think about breakfast anymore. It doesn't even come to my mind anymore. And I just wake up, brush my teeth, start my day. So also that's something that we were always preached, even me, my entire life, the breakfast, lunch, dinner, 3 meals a day. Has that evolved? Is it more flexible than we were taught to believe?
Well, the thing was, the breakfast that you were getting, what was it missing?
Nutrients.
Protein, fiber, nutrients. So you were eating all angry leprechauns, and you started your whole day on this sugar roller coaster ride. And so what the research has really shown is that blood sugar stabilizing blood sugar is the key to success. So if we are able for our breakfast to get 2 eggs and some fruit or whole grain toast or something like that, again, protein and fiber, you're not going to get a sugar spike. You're going to get sustainable blood sugar, and you're also going to be able to get it to lunch easier and not overeat at the lunchtime. So this is where, but again, working with wherever you are, what works for you, but you were starting your day with a full-blown angry leprechaun sugar blast. And so this is where we're finding that that's not what breakfast was supposed to be. It was supposed to be starting it off, with a fiber and protein source.
But is the 3 meal structure, is that something that we still advise, that we still strive towards, or is it more flexible than we believe that it is or should be?
It can be flexible, but the thing is, if you're missing an entire meal, how are you making up for those nutrients? How are you getting, the vitamin C, the vitamin A, the protein, the fiber source? Like, if you're missing an entire meal, you may be missing out on those key nutrients. So are you going to be able to get those throughout the day? Are you going to put that in a way of a snack? How are you getting those nutrients and vitamins? How are you reaching amount of protein that you need a day? So do you see what I mean? So that's where, when we break it up into 3 separate meals, we can, as a dietitian, we can kind of balance it so that we know we're getting enough of those nutrients, vitamins, minerals evenly throughout the day to maintain blood sugar and also to give your body what it needs.
Yeah, so and that makes sense. So hypothetically, if I only eat 2 meals or 1 meal a day, but am able to consume enough nutrients, like a maybe a regular person would over 3 meals, then I should be okay nutrition wise, or is it better for the body metabolically maybe to consume it in different windows of the day?
It's different to consume it for different windows of the day because of the stress it puts on our digestive tract. Eating that large quantity can put a lot of stress there for the stomach to be able to break down, for the nutrients to be absorbed. It really is. And so to give you another analogy to kind of help you to think about this, if you think about protein, so protein comes in from eggs, from chicken, from beans, from soy, wherever that protein's coming from.
Yep.
It gets broken down into this like amino acid pool. And this pool breaks all those little, basically all these little building blocks into these pools. And if you think about like a water park where there's all these different water slides coming off, that amino pool goes to hair, skin, nails, DNA, RNA, bones, heart muscle. All these different water slides are working. Well, once that pool is dried up, so you have lunch, you eat a sugary sandwich, and you used all of your amino acids, there's no more to pull from. There's no more. You can't pull them from the body. So once your pool is dry, your water slides aren't functioning at full speed. So this is where getting even amount of protein throughout the day keeps the pool full, keeps the water slides all going. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So in general, for like a breakfast, a way to avoid the was it the sugar roller coaster you mentioned? So is it
Yeah.
is it because you can still be on the roller coaster, right? Even getting the nutrients, because I could have added nutrients, into my cereal bowl. So I'm consuming the nutrients now, but then I'm still on the roller coaster.
You're missing fiber and protein.
I see.
And that's where, like, I have to say, my whole life, I have been like an anti-cereal person. And people are like, what? And I'm like, for the most cases, it's literally all Angry Leprechaun. Like, you're not getting anything but Angry Leprechaun. Like, and you're starving after. It's causing a lot of the kids with ADHD. Like, it's just really, truly not giving our bodies what it needs. And I really have never been a fan of cereal.
But if no one was looking and you could have a bite of one cereal, what would your favorite be?
I don't really like it. I think,
Yeah.
like you just said, maybe just like plain Cheerios or something like that is what I would go for. I remember when I was broke in college, I had a box of plain Cheerios behind my bed. So I would just like, somehow those are crunchy and not
Yeah.
sugary loaded. Yeah.
I used to
But it's interesting,
in
but
college,
also
Honey Nut Cheerios was my go-to, and absolutely used to be addicted. Not anymore.
But if you think about it, again, the serving size for most cereal is 3/4 of a cup. So it was never supposed to be like the main part of the meal. It's supposed to go with a yogurt, a fruit. It's supposed to go with something. So that's where also thinking about that too. Like if you added that Honey Nut Cheerios onto a Greek yogurt or with 2 eggs or something like that, then you could balance it out. And so it's all about that balance.
Another one that again just keeps confusing me, and I can never get an answer for, is the brown versus white rice thing. Because it obviously, like, intuitively,
It came up the other day.
like we've been preached, is whole grain and brown is a lot better. But in recent years, I've been seeing people say, don't waste your time on brown rice. It's actually healthier to get white rice. So me, when I travel to the US, I go to a Chipotle. I used to go straight to, I know, sorry about the Chipotle, but I used to go straight for the brown rice. But now I opt in for the white rice, and it tastes better to me. And I tell myself that I'm also being a little bit healthier because that's what they say.
Yeah, you're right. There isn't much difference between the fiber sources. And remember, we're going back to why we're going towards the brown. And the brown, in most cases, that's because of the fiber. But you need to make sure anything brown says 100 or whole, because you could just be getting grains with brown food coloring, just so you
Yeah.
know. So it has to say 100% or whole. But the difference between brown rice and white rice is it's just a small difference of fiber source that it's less, it really isn't that much of a difference. So I don't consume that much rice. I try to go more towards, like, we love farro. It's one of our favorite grains. We love sorghum. So we try to go more towards whole grains that are going to give me more protein, more nutrients, more vitamins than going with the rice.
Yeah,
But
very
hence that I'm eating sushi today. We're getting lunch delivered, and I'm getting white rice sushi. So, like, you know what I mean? It's not that I don't eat it, but
sticky
I just,
rice too.
for dinner time, I don't really. Yeah, exactly. It's so good.
Good. Enjoy. Also,
Thanks.
exercise. Where does how you provide a lot of education on nutrition,
Yep.
but where does exercise come in there, and what part does exercise play
Yes.
in the general breaking down of these nutrients and energy levels, and just
Yep.
being able to really feed off these nutrients maybe properly?
Yes. So we exercise is a part of every single lesson that we do. We have a goal setting for exercise on our platform, the Healthy platform. We actually have integrations with all the devices. We have exercise trackers. We are actually just this next month acquiring an exercise company called Rowdy to put on our platform as well. Exercise is a big proponent of health because it's helping to move things through the body. So if you're walking, it's going to help just that gravity. Think about that when you're vertical versus horizontal. Helps with mental health. They even have done studies on, getting outside to exercise because you're seeing the green, the blue, and how that affects mental health. It also, with exercise, it will spur your liver to make more of your good cholesterol, your HDL. So there's just a lot of reasons for exercise, and we always are putting it in there. But just so you know, again, everything in moderation, including moderation. So if you're going above and beyond and you're really pushing hard with exercise, that can create more free radicals, which can lead to cell damage. So again, it's about that moderation. It's about how much should you be doing. And we want to make sure we're getting at least 3 hours of exercise a week and try to break that up into 30 minutes, or even 10 minutes 3 times a day. So it doesn't have to be, you in Jane Fonda workout gear and like doing whatever. It's just really, truly, I think we want to get more into the word movement than we want exercise, because I feel people there's a hurdle there. And there shouldn't be. Just movement is where we want to talk about.
I think you're absolutely right. Because one of the things I preach to the people around me is just move for 20 minutes a day. Because if you are eating
Yeah.
balanced and you don't really, go over the top with food and eat things, in crazy amounts that you shouldn't be, really like the smallest amount of movement or exercise, really, comes a long way, and it does a lot of good things for you. And now if I do shift to talking about physique or weight or things like that, even then just a little bit of movement can really come a long way when eating properly or eating in a balanced way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all is this combination, and that's what I'm saying with like American Heart or whatever. It's a
Yeah.
combination of all different things that comes together, so that we are our best, healthiest selves. So it is a combination of all the verticals of health.
In the American Heart Association, what is your role there? Sorry, what is your role there? What is it you're hoping to achieve through that role?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So I am a board member and on our local chapter here. And my goal is to do more advocacy work and then in the way of education. So I want to go back to that sodium thing for a second, because
Yeah, which is the
sodium
salt, the
is a
salt, right?
natural, yes, salt. So in salt, you have sodium. And sodium is a natural electrolyte, which truly helps regulate our blood pressure, helps regulate water transfer between cells and things like that. So you need sodium in the diet, just so we all know. So that's where, again, another word that's been demonized, but it is necessary for a lot of things in the body because it is electrolyte. Now, the other thing about salt is that most table salt in America had iodine added to it because iodine was a missing nutrient, which was leading to a lot of thyroid issues back like in the 50s. So they started adding iodine into the salt. So table salt was also serving a very necessary purpose of getting iodine. So just to back that up for a second. So iodine helps, if you've ever had your thyroid tested and they do like the TSH, the T3, the T4, well, it's actually iodine helps to go in and turn from the T3 to the T4. So really, truly making your thyroid work, which connects to a lot of things in the body. So we need that iodine. We need that sodium. The problem was in America, we were getting way too much processed food that had enormous amount of sodium. So from canned foods, frozen foods, fast food, it had way too much sodium. So kind of like the way too much gluten or way too much angry leprechauns, we had way too much sodium. But the message should be different with the American Heart Association. The message should be, let's eat real food. We can still have some salt added to the top because we're getting that natural electrolyte, because we're getting that iodine. Those are necessary things. But if we're eating real food, not processed and stripped of all nutrients, then we're able to truly understand that messaging. So that's my goal for being on the board, is truly bringing to light this message of real food.
What is something that maybe 10 years ago, you thought one way about and now completely different, or maybe something you push it now, but back then it was on the blacklist, or vice versa?
So the number two of them, number one is the egg. We have learned so much about that egg and how many nutrients it brings. It brings vitamin D, vitamin E, B vitamins. It brings some of that iodine. It has that healthy fat. It's such an incredible food. And so that is something that I always talk about, the benefits of egg. They're such a nutrient dense source. They're incredible. Truly, truly incredible. The other thing, and if anyone around me, I have my dietitian Liv here with me, everyone knows what's my favorite word, Liv?
Fiber.
Fiber.
My favorite word is fiber. And 10 years ago, I really didn't know the benefits of fiber. It's working with Dr. Voss from Syracuse University and learning about the anatomy and physiology and how important fiber is and what it does and how it works in the body. And so if I can get people to eat more fiber, I really believe that we could reverse a lot of chronic disease that we're seeing today.
So can we talk about fiber for a second? Because, when you say fiber, my mind goes to pooping is the main benefit.
Yeah, that was the only thing it was equated to for decades. That was the only thing. And so now we're realizing that that fiber does help you go to the bathroom, but also helps with so many other things. So it truly helps. So I'm going to explain this. So when fiber comes into the body, it's kind of like those old Western movies where you see that like hay bale going through and like cleaning things up. It kind of goes through the body and helps to rough up those sides of the digestive tract and rough it all up and get things spurred up and going. It also, when it comes into the digestive tract, those little bacteria, 100 trillion bacterial cells, eat that fiber and give us more nutrients and vitamins, like vitamin K2, B12, and it helps to create more vitamins for us. Plus, it helps to spur on more serotonin. So 90% of our serotonin is made in that digestive tract. So without that fiber source, we wouldn't be able to feed our gut bacteria to make that serotonin. And that's the connection between mental health as well. And then lastly, when we eat that fiber source, it breaks down into the nutrients that we need to build the house for the gut bacteria. bacteria. And so we host it there, and that helps to spur on that good cholesterol, HDL, which goes and cleans up and recycles the cholesterol. So I could go on and on and on about the benefits of fiber, but there's just so many that if we could understand and educate on what fiber sources are, how do you get fiber evenly throughout the day? And so this is where, starting with that breakfast, how are you going to get that fiber in breakfast, lunch, dinner, so we're getting enough? And the goal, just so you know, is getting in at least 5 to 10 grams of fiber per meal.
All right,
Per meal.
noted.
The average American gets 5 grams a day. Yeah. So we are truly decreasing our metabolism. We're decreasing our serotonin levels. We're decreasing our ability to make that HDL. And so that's why we're really flip-flopped right now.
What's the easiest way to get fiber? I know there's these products out there like powders and stuff that you can sprinkle on your food.
Okay.
But yeah, tell us.
Yep. So so we have some people that really do not like fruits and vegetables. They do not like beans, things like that. So that's where I'm big on, if you don't get it in your diet, then you should be getting it in the way of a supplement. So we are lucky that there are supplements out there for people that really truly have a hard time getting it in through food. But if you can get it in through food, great sources are things like any form of bean. So your kidney beans, navy beans, black beans, they're inexpensive. They're the best source of fiber. Also, if you can get it in from your fruits and vegetables, like apples are a great source, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. You can get in from asparagus and Brussels sprouts. There's so many great ways. Artichokes. I mean, there's so many great ways to get in fiber sources. Also from like nuts and seeds. So lots of ways to get in fiber sources. But that's where the education comes into play too.
Really, really cool. Where do you see, the future going in terms of health education, weight, obesity issues? And it's unfortunately the US is leading the way on this, from my understanding. But other countries, especially Western countries, are catching up pretty fast to the US. So where do you see it going? Are you hopeful? I know you and your team are probably tackling this issue one person at a time. But where do you see this going from a macro level?
Well, we're pushing into work sites. So we're in 295 work sites to date and hoping to get into 200,000 work sites, because I believe that the education should come during the day. People are really busy, they have families, and so getting in education easily and accessibly through video content, webinars, and pushing this information through work sites is a way that we can truly reach the mass amount of people. And I was very fortunate to go to India right before COVID and see, and exactly what you're saying, in different countries that this problem is spurring its ugly head. And so with these types of programs, we're able to reach any country and truly be able to give them this education. So we're excited to see what we can do on a mass level. And why I do podcasts like this is to see, can we connect to that business owner? Can we connect to that physician's office? Reaching out to me to see how we can partner up and get this to the mass amount of population.
Really cool. And obviously, food is everyone I know, you just think about food all the time, at least 3 times a day. And if anyone here is listening and works in a corporation office environment, just stop your day for a second, look at the kitchen, and you'll just see people walking in and out all the time, getting snacks all the time, getting angry leprechaun snacks all the time
Angry
throughout
leprechauns.
the day, which again is probably putting everyone in the everyone who's living this way on that roller coaster from the moment that they step in that office kitchen for the first time that day until they leave. So I think this is extremely important information, and I think that we do have to educate ourselves, and it's just it takes effort. Like I mentioned in the beginning, it takes effort and discipline just to kind of try and filter things out, because so much is thrown out at us, also from our world, the world of therapy or the world of exercise. so many people like throwing out information. So many people like throwing out, certain catchphrases that are clickbaity and compelling, and it can cause a lot of harm. So, I want to believe that we should be balanced and not maybe jump at certain things that maybe seem easier, or certain things that maybe promise the nicest abs or the nicest butt or whatever it is, but actually just go for the balanced way and try and figure it out for yourself long term. Because if not, all these diets and all these different things, they do seem very short term. And I don't know in your experience if you've seen long success with these things, but it always seems like it's something people try and give up.
Exactly. And I think that's why they're short term, because we can't cut out nutrients that our body needs. The body will rebel.
I know you have a long day ahead of you in the US. I'm already 5 hours ahead. So I'm heading towards the end of my day. I don't know if you know, but in England, Europe, London, if you remember, I think you said you've been here. So the sun's gonna be out till like 10 p.m., which has its pros and cons, but it does a nice pro is that it does extend your evening, and I think it does extend my energy level. So I'm excited to enjoy my evening. But Kelly, it's really great meeting you online. I hope we get to do this in a studio in person in the future. I'm excited to keep following you, and I'm excited to see what you and your team do out there. And hopefully we can, again, one person at a time, one workstation at a time, we can try and tackle this huge issue that is affecting probably most people.
Yeah. I appreciate you having me on today, and I hope anyone listening got some real tips that they can put forth today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you.